We are going to be going over the 7 common mistakes I see investors make when it comes to multifamily investing. I currently own several small multifamily properties, but this really applies to any size multifamily because when it comes to multifamily, you just need as many things as possible going your way. I mean, really any type of deal, you need that, but multifamily is just the stakes are a little bit higher, so you really want to be sure you're not making these mistakes. Number 1, make sure you are working with a real estate agent that has multifamily experience or specializes in multifamily. The residential world and the multifamily world are 2 different spaces. There's agents that do multifamily and there's agents that don't have any clue about multifamily. And if you take a residential agent and have them start doing, even if it's like small multifamily, it's going to be a lot riskier for you as the buyer. Even if the agent's only done a few multifamily deals, they're going to be so much more savvier than someone that hasn't. Even if the other agent has been in residential real estate for 30 years, they're just not going to be able to see things the way someone that's done a multifamily transaction has done. And if you need a good multifamily agent referral, reach out to me. I'm also in the Washington, D.C. market, so if you're looking to purchase in that market, I can help you out. Not only do you need a multifamily agent to make a better buying decision, a lot of multifamily deals are done off market. So a multifamily agent can source deals off market. Like myself personally, I'm always marketing to off market sellers. So I come across deals, and because other agents and other investors know that I've purchased multifamily, I've done multifamily, they oftentimes send me off market deals that not too many other people know about. So by working with a multifamily agent, you're going to make a better buying decision, and you're also going to have more buying options available. So it's pretty much a no-brainer. The next mistake I see, and I made this mistake on one of the multifamily properties that I bought, I didn't have enough in reserves. So with multifamily, like let's say you're just buying a 4-unit property, you pretty much need to have like 4 times as many reserves as you normally would for just like if you're just buying a single family house or maybe a condo or something like that, because there's 4 times as many things that can go wrong. So you really need to have reserves for just like if the tenants decide they don't want to pay their rent, but also if there's like major repairs. I had a property where my neighbor's house basically, one of the main sewer lines broke and basically flooded my entire basement. So all my boiler systems, went out, HVAC, hot water heaters, all that had to be replaced. Now, luckily insurance, basically paid for it, but then, insurance can take a while to pay, and then you have to, potentially move the tenant somewhere. So you just need to factor in like worst case scenarios. And one thing I heard that was pretty interesting, another investor was talking about it. He said he doesn't actually have cash reserves, but he has a line of credit for every single property. So it's kind of like if something bad were to happen, he'd kind of like be going into debt a little bit to pay for things. But you need to have one or the other, cash reserves or some type of line of credit that you can access, for worst case scenarios. The next mistake I see is investors like rushing into a deal. They're so excited about multifamily, they just want to get started. And I think with your first multifamily, it's like you don't need to buy the steal of the year. You don't need to make $1 million on your first multifamily. You want to get into it, but you also don't want to just rush into it and buy like a mediocre deal. You should look at a minimum of like 10 or 15 properties, whether it's online or in person. Ideally, you drive some of these neighborhoods and you see some of these properties in person to get a better feel for it. But ideally look at like 10 to 25, sometimes even more than that, properties, because there's always going to be the low-hanging fruit. After looking at 10 or 20, you're going to clearly see some that are way overpriced, and then there's clearly going to be some like, hey, why is this so low? This seems like it could have potential. I was just working with somebody and we probably looked at maybe like 15 or so properties, and some needed like a ton of work and like weren't even livable. Some were like really nice, but then they were way overpriced. And we kept kind of looking and looking, like I said, maybe 15 or 20 deals, and then we found the perfect one that was good neighborhood, really high cash flow, already pretty renovated, and was under market value. And it kind of just checked all of the boxes. But if we had only looked at like 5 or 6 properties, like we probably wouldn't have, like we would have found like an okay property, but this one really stood out as like an amazing deal. I was telling her, I was like, man, I wish I had bought this one. Because it was actually, I don't want to call it a steal, but it was a very, very good deal. The next mistake I see investors make is buying because they think the property is just going to appreciate, right? So they think, okay, if I buy it at $500K right now, that means in the next 5 years it's going to be worth $600K. And yes, while that does definitely happen, appreciation you should think of as a bonus. You should buy based on the current values. And ideally, you're buying under market value, and maybe you're forcing the appreciation up to that 600K mark. So the way that a lot of hard money lenders, like people that invest in loans for investors, the way they can stay in business in up and down markets is that they do like what's called forced appreciation. So if all the comps are like 600K renovated, they'll lend at 70% of that value minus the cost of repairs. So if you're buying something that's like 500K, but the comps are at 600K, and you need to put 50K into it, yes, you can force that appreciation. And if the market keeps going up, that's nice, but think of that as a bonus. A lot of investors got into trouble in like 2007 timeframe where they're like, okay, we're gonna buy it at 500K and we just know it's gonna be worth 600K in a few years because that's what the market's doing. But if the values drop and maybe you're cash flow negative every single month, you can get into trouble. So try to buy something under market value. Appreciation is a nice bonus, but it's definitely not a guaranteed. And obviously you want something that's going to cash flow every single month, whether the value goes up or not. All right, so real quick, if you made it this far and you're looking to buy a multifamily property in the Washington, D.C. market, reach out to me. I'd love to assist you. Or if you're looking to buy somewhere else, reach out to me. I can put you in contact with someone that's really good. I also made a short mini course on buying your first small multifamily property, so definitely check out that link below. The next mistake I see with multifamily buyers is not getting an approval first from your lender. So you really want to know, like, before you, you can look at properties online, but before you start seeing stuff in person, you should know how much you can afford. I've had people that are like, oh, we want to buy the $1 million multifamily, and then the lender's like, no, you can't afford this, and like, not only can you not afford that, but you can't buy any multifamily right now, or at least for another year. So you really want to get in. I can put you in touch with some good lenders that can get you approvals. But you really want to know how much, what your budget is. That's kind of important if you're buying multifamily or any property. And sometimes it's the opposite as well. So I've had people where they're like, oh, I can only afford like this amount. And then they talk to the lender and the lender's like, well, if you have these rents coming in, you can actually afford this amount. And it might be significantly higher than they're thinking. And with multifamily, you don't want to just get pre-qualification letter or something like that. And that's more for like the residential multifamily, like under 4 units. But really like vet your finances first before you start shopping, for a multifamily property. And a good agent can put you in touch with, the right lender. The next mistake I see is different investors like not really understanding the landlord and tenant laws in different areas. So for example, in Washington, D.C. versus Virginia, the tenant and landlord laws are drastically different. So you want to like read articles and really familiarize yourself with the tenant and landlord laws in your area, because it can make a big difference. If someone's not paying rent in DC versus someone's not paying rent in Virginia, that's an entirely different way of analyzing a deal. DC, they can really drag out the process, whereas Virginia, you can typically get someone out very quickly. You also want to find out about things like rent control. If someone's paying under market rents, can you just jack up the rent as soon as they leave, or do you have to go through some lengthy process? There's also different organizations that might help to pay the tenant's rent, especially since the pandemic and everything. There's actually, if someone's not paying their rent, there's a lot of nonprofits now that will actually cover the tenant's rent. So that, it's something to keep in mind. The next mistake I see is kind of like relying on just one person's opinion of, like, let's say you come across an issue, maybe it's a home inspection or some potential issue, right? Whether it's renovation or whatever it is. You should get a few opinions to make an educated decision. I remember there was one property where someone was like, oh, it's going to cost them, like, it was like $100,000 to do this. Whereas it really wasn't, like, the person was almost like ripping someone off. You should talk to your agent, you should talk to a home inspector, and maybe get a few bids from a couple contractors, and then make a decision. Don't just rely on one person who's like, oh, you should never do that. You don't want to completely blow the deal up. If it's something big, just get a few opinions. You can usually get extensions on multifamily deals if it's, if something big comes up. So check out some more videos on my channel and reach out to me if you have any multifamily questions or if you need a multifamily agent, no matter where you are. See you on the next one. Bye.